Cardinals Corner from Arizona Sports.
Cardinals Corner from Arizona Sports with Tyler Drake and Lauren Koval.
What's going on, everybody? Tyler Drake here for another edition of Cardinals Corner, but this one's going to be a little bit different this time around. No, my co-host Lauren Koval is not here. She's got some other duties going on at Arizona Sports, so give our best to her. But instead, I brought in Mike Randle, Chief Content Officer for FTN. I really have been waiting for this interview to get some more insight behind the Arizona Cardinals seemingly comeuppance this year, especially after these last couple of weeks. So, Mike, thank you very much for jumping on. Cannot wait to get some more insight from you for sure.
Tyler, I'm thrilled. I got to start with the mea culpa here. My predictions for the beginning of the season was that the Cardinals were going to be at the bottom of the division. Boy, was I wrong. They just continue to impress, and they are sitting atop the division, looking good right now. We'll get into some of the stats, but very bullish on them moving forward the rest of the season.
Yeah, what was so if we go back, what were some of the things that you weren't so hot on this team on?
Yeah, I just was I'm always a little slower to acclimate to rookie wide receivers. I think they take time, and since we love fantasy football and we love analyzing the combine, and it just seemed like Marvin Harrison, could have a decent year, but not to the level that the Cardinals would need him to be. I like Michael Wilson. A couple of the players I thought were all right. Trey McBride, coming off that great year, I thought maybe defenses would concentrate on him a little bit more. I'm a big James Conner guy, but of course he's always missed a few games here and there, like at least 3 games, I think, each of the last couple of years. So that was it. And the defense, I didn't know what to expect. It wasn't great last year. I didn't see massive upgrades, but they've proved us wrong. And really, there are some hidden gems on both sides of the ball that I think people are finally trying to realize. And I remember the point earlier this year when I realized it and said, this Cardinal team is a lot better than I gave it credit for.
Yeah. So when you're looking at the metrics, what are some of the things that you've been really surprised with so far this year?
Well, I remember the beginning of the year, we looked at DVOA. Now, DVOA is value adjusted, basically defensive value over average. How much better or worse you would be on specific plays and situations when compared to the league average. Beginning of the year, when you looked at defense, they were at the bottom of the list. Right now, as we speak, the Arizona Cardinals are currently number 14 in total defense, and they're very even. They're 14 against the pass, and they're 13 against the run. I want to point out that teams that are ahead of them don't have such an even split. You look at the Chargers, who can be attacked on the ground. They're 18th, but 6th through the pass. So they have situations where they're balanced, and other teams are not. And as I mentioned to you before we started, the game that really woke me up was that Charger game, because I've been very bullish with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater and the rushing attack for the Chargers. And you have Jim Harbaugh living in a van on the beach. He's going to run the ball, old school. And the Cardinals just stuffed them. And that's when I said, this Cardinals run defense is better than I thought it was. That has sort of been the key here, because you have offensive playmakers with Kyler Murray and Conner and Harrison and McBride. So the question was the defense. They're showing up, they're playing well, and that's getting you in the win column.
Have you been more surprised with what maybe the front seven is doing, or has it been more of what you're seeing into the secondary with them?
It's sort of both, because what we can do here at FTN is we have something called DVOA adjusted fantasy points again. So it's a percentage, how much percentage the team allows above or below fantasy points to each position. So if you look at Arizona, normally you have a lot of red and some green. They're very even here on defense. They are right in the middle in quarterback adjusted fantasy points against. So they're pretty solid. They are right in the middle, if not near sort of the top half with running backs. And they're pretty good against wide receivers. Where they struggle is wide receiver threes have beaten them. They allow 28% more than the average team. That puts them 4th worst. But if you're giving up to the wide receiver 3, you're doing a pretty good job elsewhere. So really, tight ends you're great against, negative 19% lower than the average. Wide receiver 1's negative 2%. Wide receiver 2, negative 7%. So the metrics really are showing that you're doing an outstanding job for a team that in week 1, I would have told you, I didn't think their defense was very good. But when you have a situation like that, and you have a player like Kyler Murray, which as you saw multiple times this year, San Francisco, whatever it is, he has the ball late, that's going to be a problem, because teams are going to play prevent, then he's going to run, and then the explosive plays are going to happen. So both sides, the front 7 and how they're defending in the secondary, they're getting pressure, and they're not giving up those big plays. It's a great job by the Cardinals and the coaching staff.
Yeah, definitely. Just in your line of work, have you seen kind of a turnaround that this defense is currently having, knowing that they've lost so many key players, key starters. I mean, Bijo Ojulari didn't even get to play a game before he tore his ACL. You got Dennis Gardeck, who tore his, Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols, they're done for the year. I mean, it's pretty, at least on my end, it's pretty surprising for them to actually be improving that defensive mark instead of actually falling maybe even below that.
Yeah, it's surprising. But what I mentioned to you before we started is what's even more surprising is their strength of schedule that they have completed is the second hardest strength of schedule of any NFL team next to Tampa Bay. They are 22nd moving forward. So not only have they played well, not only have they exceeded expectations, they've done so against the second hardest strength of schedule per DVOA here at FTN. That's saying something. That's a great opportunity. And you have other teams in San Francisco, Seattle. I talk on the Seattle podcast every week. Very nervous now about the Cardinals because you're healthy, you're playing well, and the harder part of your schedule is gone.
Yeah, definitely. Especially for a team like the Niners. I think they've got one of the hardest, I think, remaining strength of schedules, I think, from what I've seen. So definitely on that side of, moving on to that side of the ball, I guess, let's just get into the division a little bit. Just looking at that as a whole, I mean, is the remaining strength of schedule kind of the big factor there, or what are you looking at? Because I did see the recent projections, and you guys have the Cardinals as a team that is going, I believe, to win the NFC West at like 54%, or maybe it was the playoffs, one of the two, but somewhere they're going to the postseason. So what is going into all of those numbers? What are you guys taking into account over there to really build that?
We take into account our projections. When we have our betting models each week, we simulate the games 10,000 times and we generate edges, 10% edges in automatic play. And I will tell you this, make you laugh. The biggest edge I have ever seen, I've been at FTN now a little bit over 2 years. Biggest edge I ever saw, any sport, was last year, week 3. You know what I'm going to say. Cardinals at home against the Cowboys. We had like a 25% edge, and no one thought there was Josh Dobbs, the whole thing. Cardinals win the game outright. So there's been a lot of double-digit edges here for the Cardinals recently. We run those simulations. We project that. We look at our stats hub, which is broken down by over 75 charters, every play, down and distance, how close you're guarding the receivers. That all goes into it, as well as our betting edges, as well as DVOA, and we take a look and see where we're at. But yeah, we project the Cardinals right now in the playoffs over 50%. You look at your schedule, sure, you have Seattle twice, and you've struggled with Seattle recently, but things have changed. New coach, Seattle struggling, you're not. And you end the year at Carolina, okay, at Los Angeles, and then, of course, San Francisco. But that game's at home. So really great opportunity here for you to get in, get a wild card, or even a division title. Wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, that I think, and I guess this is another question I got for you. Do you feel like it's more of a Cardinals make the playoffs if they win the division more so than they win the wild card? I just feel like it's going to be so, not win the wild card, but be in the wild card race. I feel like given how everything's kind of shaking out with the division, it might be more likely that that's how they get in as opposed to maybe squeaking in as a wild card team.
Yeah, the problem is going to be the NFC North. I do think the Bears are starting to fall apart, so I'm pushing them away. I'm bullish on the Packers. They just have to stay healthy. So sure, do I think the Lions and the Packers and probably the Vikings at 7-2 are getting in? Yes, although if you notice, Sam Darnold's turning into a little bit of a pumpkin and regressing right now, but they did get the win against Jacksonville. So yeah, if you assume those two teams are getting in from the NFC North, and then probably the Eagles and Commanders, you're not leaving a lot of spots here. So the key is to beat the Seahawks. You have to knock the Seahawks out because they're at the bottom now. You have a game and a half lead on them right now, 6-4 to 4-5. So the key would be to get the next game, sort of push them to the back, and then focus here. And I have a feeling that game against the Niners to end the season is going to be very, very big for both teams.
Yeah, 100%. So when we're looking at the division, what's the team that you are most, when it comes to the Cardinals' chances, who are you looking at the most as a potential person to maybe, or team to usurp them moving forward?
Tyler, as I'm a math guy, so I always believe in regression. The Niners are good. They have struggled. No Ayuk, which could be addition by subtraction, by the way, but McCaffrey's back. Certainly, I think they're going to get better. They got a nice win, which they needed against Tampa Bay. It was close, but they have a tough schedule coming as well. I think right now the Cardinals are playing so well, especially against the run. I give you the edge over the Rams. So it's going to come down to the Niners, but the Niners still have to go to Green Bay. They have to go to Buffalo. And then they have a couple games coming up. They have Detroit right before you in week 17. So a lot of exciting things. It's still the Niners to me because they have struggled so much. I think they will regress and get better. I don't think they're going to continue the downward spiral. Healthy Debo. Kittle looks healthy. Here comes McCaffrey. Here come the Niners. That's your biggest competition.
Yeah, definitely. So when we're looking at the Rams, though, because I mean the Rams have been pretty solid of late. They've got Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua back. What are they've got to be the third team there? Is it close between Niners and Rams right now, or do you really think it's pretty much the Niners and everybody else?
Well, I'll have to tell you after tonight, the thing that I struggle with the Rams is that it's their defense. Their pass defense is still not good. They are terrible against wide receiver ones. All those stats I quoted that the Cardinals were good at, they are not. They allow 21% above the average to wide receiver ones. I know Tyreek Hill is active tonight. 27% to wide receiver twos, Jalen Waddle. So there are some opportunities here for Marvin Harrison, even against tight ends, 11%. So Trey McBride should have a field day. So I just trust, I can't believe I'm saying this. We went back 2 months ago. I trust the Cardinals defense more right now. That is really the distinguishing factor. Continue to get pressure, get those turnovers. Don't turn the ball over on offense, which I think they've done a good job of. That's the difference. You know, the kiss of death in the betting world, when we give out an edge and we have an underdog and you see a lot of turnovers, we're grinning from ear to ear because that's the kiss of death of the favorite. Take care of the ball, get pressure, and you'll hang around. You hung around. You got that fumble by Jordan Mason against the Niners, and that changed the game with 6 minutes left. That's what you have to keep doing. And if you do that, you have a quarterback who's dynamic, who can get it done late.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the offense, I know we're kind of going back and forth here a little bit, but offensively, I think a lot of us thought this unit could really take a next step forward. You got Kyler in his year two in the system. You've got a lot of not a lot of new additions, but you've got some additions in Marvin Harrison Jr. Trey McBride is obviously, I think, one of the top tight ends in the league right now. A lot of other guys. Michael Wilson, I think, is a serviceable wide receiver too. He's still learning. You got Greg Dortch, you can do about everything in the slot, and then you've got Zay Jones, who I'm still waiting for to show up a little bit more.
He's gonna have a game. He'll have a game.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a matter of time. He's too talented not to have a kind of breakout game there. But looking at the offense, is there anything? Is this kind of maybe where you thought they would be, or how far are they exceeding expectations for you right now?
I thought they would be good. Marvin Harrison has been a little bit better. I know he's been up and down, but the big spike weeks have been higher than I thought they would be. I thought your offense would be fine as long as James Conner, who I love, and Trey McBride stayed healthy, and they have. And the beautiful thing about Kyler Murray is he's being super efficient. It's not the 4,500-yard passing season. He's completing 67% of his passes. He's got 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Compare that to other MVP candidates. How about Patrick Mahomes, 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Jordan Love, 15 and 10. Jared Goff, fresh off of 5 picks last night. So there are other quarterbacks here in the division and in football who are turning the ball over. He's not. He's doing it when it counts with a healthy Connor, who's a great running back. And you saw the other day, they stuffed him a little bit, gets 5 receptions, 80 yards. Yeah. So the versatility, Trey McBride's a monster. And Harrison now has been given a couple weeks to get acclimated. And you're starting to see him get a little more consistent as well. So I love Greg Dortch. Everybody did in the preseason. I mean, I still have plenty of shares of him in Underdog Best Ball because I'm waiting for that big week during the championship for him to pop. He's a guy easy to root for, of course. But you have enough weapons, but you needed health. And health is not something to take for granted when you look around the league. Dak Prescott, everyone else who's falling by the wayside. But this Arizona offense has stayed healthy, and they're efficient. That's what matters.
Is there a spot where maybe they could improve a little bit more out of any other spot? Any big areas that you could see maybe that's where they could probably improve the most?
My suggestion would be I just keep waiting for the shoe to drop with James Conner as much as I love him. We have right now, he's getting a 63% snap share, which is lower than it's been the last few weeks because I see Trey Benson is getting involved. Yep. I think that's critical. I think great coaches, and you saw one with Jim Harbaugh on the Chargers, they brought Gus Edwards into the mix immediately this weekend because they want to keep J.K. Dobbins healthy. I think you need to keep those key players healthy. I think you have to start rotating in Trey Benson more, get him some more reps, and you save Connor for those critical games because he's been incredible. He's got 664 rushing yards. He's averaging 4.5 yards a carry. He's got the 4 touchdowns, only 1 fumble. None lost, I believe. I think it's none lost. So it's been great this year for him. That's what I would say is start working in some of the other players and take advantage of the depth and the health that you've had, knock on wood, that will continue.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure one of James Conner's fumble was a fumble recovery touchdown by Trey McBride,
That's right. Yes,
who still does not have a receiving touchdown, but he's got a rushing
bro.
touchdown
That's
and
gonna
a
regress. That's gonna regress. Right, right.
just wild, man. Just so funny to see kind of that stat line all formulate, but still Trey's killing it. When you're looking at Kyler, is there anything that's really different this year about him? I know you've talked about his effectiveness and being able to just keep the ball out of the other team's hands. I think he only has 3 interceptions on the year. Anything super different, maybe between last year's Kyler and this year's Kyler with this new regime for you?
Yeah, what's interesting is I'm trying to see where he shows up in terms of his rushing. I feel like he's being a lot smarter with
Yeah.
his rushing and using his legs in situations that he needs it, not overly reliant on it. And you look at the rushing yards. Of course, we're still tabulating our results from the past weekend, so this was coming into this weekend. But you look at the rushing yards, he has 350, but he's getting 8.1 yards per carry. So let's just compare that to Lamar Jackson, who has 518, a little under 200 less, more than him, 5.7 yards a carry. Jaden Daniels has been fantastic, amazing. 5.6 yards a carry. Person right behind him entering this week, Jalen Hurts, 3.7 yards a carry. So the efficiency has been incredible. 2 touchdowns, lost a couple fumbles, that's fine. And in the red zone, only 6 carries, which is another way to keep him healthy. Give it to James Conner, working Trey Benson. So just impressed with maximizing Kyler's efficiency, not putting too much on his arm or putting too much on him to make the play, and being able to use him in spots like when you're driving down the field against the Chargers or you're driving down the field against the Niners. That's when you can unleash Kyler. But an offensive set and some play calls that have made the most of him and saved him for the moments where you need it the most to get the wins.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's take a turn to the fantasy football world, because I know a lot of people are going to want to know about that, especially with the Cardinals on a bye this week. They've got to make some decisions out there. Just looking forward the rest of the way on the fantasy schedule, which Cardinals are you pinpointing as like top guys people have either got to have in their roster or got to have in their lineup, or maybe can still make a trade for them, or maybe are still in the waiver wire? Is anybody surprised? I know Trey Benson has been mentioned. I think that's one name that a lot of people are probably already maybe have as a handcuff, but I would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, if you look at their schedule coming up, and then what we do is we take a look at where the weaknesses are. So, for example, Seattle, solid against quarterbacks and running backs. They've been okay. Not great against wide receivers and abysmal against wide receiver 3. So I'll defer to you. I would say that is probably Greg Dortch. Is that where we're going to go?
That or maybe a Michael Wilson?
It could be Michael Wilson. It depends. That's hard sometimes to identify the clear 2 and 3. You know, in the Dolphins, you know who the 3 is, Odell Beckham, etc. But it's not clear. But that is what I would focus on, the weaknesses on the teams coming up. After Seattle, in between the 2 Seattle games, you have Minnesota. So if you look at Minnesota, horrific against wide receiver 1. So that should be a big game for Marvin Harrison. Pretty good against running back, so that's going to be a tougher game. May want to look for receptions out of James Conner in that game coming out of the backfield. And then your other opponents are going opponent by opponent. The Patriots, who have been abysmal across the board, despite the fact that they look great against the Bears, but I think that was more about the Bears. So all of your players should be in play there. And then the real fun begins, because if you look at tight ends, the teams that have been worse against tight ends, Cincinnati, who you don't play, but second worst, allowing 37% DVOA adjusted points against to tight ends, the Carolina Panthers. So if Trey McBride hasn't scored by then, I think he scored against Carolina. So looking at our site and using those opportunities for quarterback, who you're obviously going to use Kyler if you have him, but Connor versus Benson, is this going to be a big Harrison game? And then using some of the ancillary pieces and then predicting when you're going to have the big blow up with Trey McBride, which should be pretty soon. So that's how I would look at it coming across from a fantasy perspective. But what we love about the Cardinals more than anything is you have one of these consolidated offenses, which I love. We know where the ball's going. We don't have to decide, is it going to be an Evans game or a Godwin game? It's consolidated. And that's what has made Arizona players shine. And those that drafted them in best ball, Marvin Harrison Jr. was going at the end of round 1. Kyler Murray was being pushed back. They've really enjoyed, because it's been a great experience, because everything's consolidated. When you put points up, it's Kyler, it's Connor, it's McBride, it's Harrison.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's exactly how you said it. I think the Benson addition, I think, might be giving some Connor owners a little bit of worry there. And like you said, the injury issues are always something to watch. But I was exactly the same way with you when I saw, especially last night, just the fact that they were giving Benson more looks. It's like, yes, if you don't have to run the guy into the ground, don't do it.
Right. And I wouldn't be upset. I have Connor in a lot of my leagues, and a lot of people are calling me or contacting me on social media. What's going on? They're in panic. No way. What the Cardinals are doing, what the Chargers did with Benson Edwards is very smart. That's better for them. When these games get big, you're playing San Francisco. James Conner's getting that ball. Don't worry about it. But right now, you want to keep him healthy. Don't want him to go out with an injury. So you spent early round draft capital on Trey Benson. Why don't you use him? I think it was a perfect plan.
When you look, I don't know how far you can go into this, but are you noticing more fantasy teams having, I guess, more of the successful fantasy teams having more of these Cardinals guys on their roster as opposed to maybe, Carolina Panthers, having some Carolina Panthers? I guess that kind of a weird question, but I guess just like in one of my leagues, I've got one of the best teams. I've got James Conner. There's another guy that's one of the top teams in the leagues. He's got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler. So are you seeing a trend anywhere on that side of things? You've mentioned consolidated offense. You know who's going to eat. So are you seeing that trend too?
Yeah, for Best Ball Mania, which was the $3.5 million contest on Underdog Fantasy, who we love at FTN, is one of our sponsors. I looked at my teams and I looked at the players on the teams because you have a pot of 12. And if you're in the top two, you advance around 14, 15, 16 those weeks. And the teams that have Harrison, that have Connor, that have McBride especially, the key with a player like Trey McBride, why he's so great, is if you drafted him, you don't need a second tight end.
No.
So a lot of people were waiting on tight end and drafting 3. Well, that's great. So you could take Colby Parkinson and Jonnu Smith and one other one, or I can just take Trey McBride and roll him out every single week except for the bye week. So yes, you're finding that health has been good with Arizona. They're playing well. Harrison has had that run there with 3 weeks at 4 touchdowns, which was great. Then he was cold a little bit, but then he dropped 7 for 111 against Miami. He had the touchdown. He's performing. You can get 100 yards or a touchdown of Marvin Harrison the rest of the year. He has more than paid off. So yes, people who have Cardinals, they're performing, they're staying healthy, they're winning. Those teams are more towards the front here of the top of their leagues.
Would there be anybody that you would potentially try to sell right now?
Hard to say. If someone was desperate at quarterback and I had the Cardinal players, because you do like to stack, especially in best ball, but you may don't want to be overexposed. So if you had a good second quarterback, if you had a Tua who came off of injury with Kyler and you wanted to flip Kyler for an elite wide receiver or flip Kyler for a running back if you had some issues, I could get there. I wouldn't get enough value for Marvin Harrison. I'm never trading Trey McBride, and I'm a James Conner stan. I'm not going to – I understand people probably think the shoe is coming. He's going to miss 3 games. I don't care because, Christian McCaffrey was injury prone until he wasn't. And so if James Conner stays healthy the rest of the year, he's a top 5 running back. I am not trading him. So by default, the only one I would probably trade is Kyler if you had a really good backup.
Okay. Well, that was awesome. Yeah. Kind of feeling like that might be the case, but I got to hear from you. I got to hear from the expert. But yeah, definitely appreciate everything, Mike. Anything else you have regarding the Cardinals? Anything really stand out to you? Anything I might have missed that you want to bring up?
No, I talked about the defense, and our splits tool has been great, just isolating when there are opportunities. And then we looked at pace, which is one other thing I can bring up here. Seconds per snap, Arizona right in the middle, 27.7 seconds per snap. That's 15th, which is where you want to be. You don't want to go too fast because that can cause turnovers, and you don't want to be too slow because you have explosive playmakers. So all the metrics that we have at FTN are showing that this Arizona run is real, and they are primed with that 22nd strength of schedule remainder of the season to really keep this going and get in the playoffs for you.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you again. I really appreciate it, and thank everybody else for stopping by. As always, you can follow the show at AZ Cards Corner. You can follow me at TDrake for Sports. Mike, what's your handle so we can let them know where to follow you at?
At Randle Rand. Every morning I have something to say. Maybe tomorrow morning I'll rant about the Cardinals. That could be my move tomorrow because they're flying high. And my son is named Kyler. That's how much I love the Cardinals. There you go. Very good.
Cool. I got a son whose name is Baker, and I will. Some people say it's Baker Mayfield. Some people say it's Buda Baker, but that's how we go. But yes, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. Everybody can go follow the show. Make sure you Keep it locked on the Arizona Sports app, 98.7 and ArizonaSports.com. We're going to continue to bring you the latest straight out of the Cardinals as we get through this bye week and onto the week of Seattle, where the Cardinals will continue to see if they can keep up the pace and maintain their lead in the NFC West. But for now, we'll let you guys get back to it. Thanks for stopping by.